All right, let's take a look at a trig graphing word problem. This word problem says that the water level in the city water storage tank oscillates, so that tells you it's periodic, in a simple harmonic motion. Harmonic just means periodic, like sine, cosine, tangent, that kind of thing, or not necessarily tangent. The water level rises or varies depending on the time of day and the corresponding demand of the people. The low point, so that's going to be an important part of the water in the tank, 22 feet, occurs at 8 a.m. and 8 p.m. So that tells you that that's your period. The low point occurs at 8 and 8 a.m. and 8 p.m. So that tells you what your period length is, which is 12 hours. That's one period. Okay? The high point occurs at 2 a.m. and 2 p.m. with the water level of 58 feet. So 22 feet is the low point. So this is going to be 22. And the high point occurs at 58 feet. So we'll just put up here 58 feet. That's the high point. And it says that that occurs at 2 a.m. and 2 p.m. Now, I don't need to put both of those in there, right? I just need to put one of them in there. So, because a full period goes from point to point. So this is going to be a cosine graph if I go from low point to low point, right? And so in the very middle, it would be right here, and that's 2 p.m. Yeah, that would be 2 p.m., right? And let's just check to make sure, is this equidistant? Is 2 p.m. equidistant from 8 a.m. and 8 p.m.? It is. It's 6 hours away from each of them, so that checks out good. So it says sketch the graph for the sinusoidal function that models the data and use it to predict the water height at 4 p.m. So we're going to sketch the graph. We know that if it's sinusoidal, notice that this is a cosine graph because it's starting at the bottom and it's ending at the bottom, the way that I've drawn it. Did you have to draw it like this? No, you could have drawn it in a different way, but it would be a lot harder to do because then you'd have to find the midpoint. They're telling you, remember, sine graphs would have started at the midpoint. So the first question is, what is the midpoint? Or what is midline? Is that what your teacher calls it? What's the midline of my graph? Well, to find that, I look at the high point and the low point, and I find that total distance. So 58 minus 22 equals 36, right? That's the total distance. So what's half of that distance going to be? 36 is the total distance. Then what's this distance going to be? It's going to be half of that, which is 18. So what's 18 from 22? What's 18 from 22? What's 18 higher than 22? Yeah, it's 40. So I know this value right here is 40 feet. Okay, so my midline is 40. So notice what I'm getting is all of my values. I need A, B, C, and D. So what is what is the green line represent here? A, B, C, or D? In your equation that looks like this, this would be a cosine equation, right? Once you write A cosine B x minus C plus D. Is that how your equation looks? Different books write it different ways. So which one is the green? What is the green related to? Yeah, this is related to the amplitude. So I know my A equals 18. Does that make sense? What is the fact that I'm starting at 40? What is the 40 relating to? What is the number, the 40 feet relate to? Where do we usually start our graph? We usually started at the x-axis, but I'm actually moved it up how many? 40 feet, so that's which? That's C. I'm sorry, that's wrong, not C, it's vertical. That's D, right? So D is 40. And now, what is the period relating to? Remember how the period equals 2 pi over b, which means b equals 2 pi over the period. And what is my period? I already figured out down here, it's 12 hours. So if my period is 12 hours, then what's b? Cancel, cancel, pi over 6. Right? So b is pi over 6. And then the last thing to worry about is your horizontal shift, your c value, which is usually the hardest thing. So which way am I shifting horizontally? Where is it usually starting? It's usually starting at 0, right? So 0 is over here. And this is how much did I shift over? I shifted over 8 to the right, which means the negative is to the right. So my equation, there's my equation up there. If you need me to write it out, I'll write it here. Y equals, now, oh, remember it's actually not positive 18, it's what? Because it starts on the bottom, it's negative 18. Negative 18 cosine pi over 6 times x minus 8 plus 40. Now if you want to check it to make sure that's right, you can plug in 8. And what should you get when you plug in 8? You should get 22. When I plug in 8 here for x, that gives me 0. What's the cosine of 0? Give you a unit circle. Cosine of 0 is 1. So 1 times negative 18 is negative 18 plus 40 is 22. Now this wouldn't actually be 8, right? This would be, you'd have to do army time. So that would actually be 20. You'd think of this as 20 if you wanted to check that one. So what's 20 minus 8? 12. And what's 12 times pi over 6? 2 pi. And the cosine of 2 pi is the same as the cosine of 0. So you know it's going to be the same thing. Got it? So now the question asks you, use this model to predict at 4 p.m. Now we got to be careful. 4 p.m. we have to do army time. So don't plug 4 in, right? That's a little bit of a trick here. You want to go, remember when it goes to 12 o'clock will be 12, but then we're going to go army time. So 13, 14, 15, 16. So this is really 1600 or 16, the number 16. So I plug 16 in here for x. That gives me 16 minus 8 is 8. What's 8 times pi over 6? That's 4 pi over 3. What's the cosine of 4 pi over 3? You need your unit circle. Cosine of 4 pi over 3 is negative 1/2. So negative 1/2 times negative 18. What's negative 1/2 times negative 18? Positive 9, and then 9 plus 40 is 49. So at that time, it's going to be somewhere up here, and it's going to be 49 feet. 49 feet. Make sense?